Okay, good morning. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, secular humanists, freethinkers, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural talked about from the podium. Our church is founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. So I'm going to let you hear the Seattle Atheist Church Creed, and you can think about whether or not it's something that you agree with. So truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to other conscious beings, and we believe in good, because good works in non-mysterious ways. Okay, so I'm really glad to see everyone here today. This was the first time in like a year and a half that I did have a little bit of a hard time getting myself going. It was just a really busy week. And so this is the first time where I'm going to repeat a talk. So apologies on that. I have been reading a really wonderful book about reforming the prison system, and then I thought that this was a talk on the Michelle Alexander book, The New Jim Crow. You love that book? Well, we did a talk on that book, and then I have another talk coming that's on the reforming the prison system. And it turns out that this one has to do with gratitude. This talk has to do with gratitude. It is going to be November soon, the month, a good month for contemplating gratitude. So let me just, let's share this, and I hope you'll kind of be game to go along with it. Thank you. So gratitude, thankfulness, and appreciation of the goodness of things. So during Thanksgiving, we are going to have time to celebrate a day of thankfulness. Thanking life, thanking the people who cook for us, thanking the people in our lives. And we may also give thanks for events and things in our lives, whatever we're lucky enough to have. Now, in the past, I read some blog entries on gratitude, and some of them were pretty funny. As atheists, we don't believe that it's Providence who is putting the good things into our lives, or that the awful things that happen to us are part of some master plan. Back in the days when I was a believer, it was very helpful to have that belief. When really, really crappy stuff happened, I could contemplate that maybe it was part of some plan to make me stronger, or somehow to influence me. But today, I just have to realize that sometimes just bad stuff happens, and then try to work with that and possibly move on for that. Now, I'd like to suggest that for the next 30 days, we focus on all the good that there is. Don't just notice things that are nice, okay? Relatively simple things that are nice, the samples of cheese at Costco, your clean pillowcases. I'd like you to focus on the good with a capital G. And we so seldom talk about the good. If you think it's hard to be grateful for mundane things such as cups of coffee, then it is even harder to be grateful for the sublime things which happen on a huge scale very slowly. So, we want to start thinking about the things that are happening on a huge scale slowly and trying to develop gratitude for it. Cesare Beccaria wrote a treatise called On Crimes and Punishments in 1764. And this treatise created helping put an end to torture. Prior to its publication, death by the rack, the wheel, water torture, being drawn and quartered, and burning at stake were all common punishments. And it's only been 250 years since those things were outlawed. According to Steven Pinker, Beccaria also wrote against forcing prisoners and their families to pay for their imprisonment. That is still an issue today. And as we talked about in the book, The New Jim Crow, we do in many places actually try to force people to pay for their own incarceration. And it's like a real problem for people, in addition to doing everything we can to help them not be able to get work after they get out of prison. So we have a long way to go in becoming a more good society. But at the same time, there are many transformations which are taking place right now that are leading to us becoming a more good society. Now, there's been a lot in the news about policing and police departments, but things are much better than they were 250 years ago. So if we're going to take a long look at things, then we can see that we are in fact progressing towards the good. And so we now have agreed that police should receive training in de-escalation tactics and in the use of non-lethal force. And there is a movement now for police to wear body cams. We are putting in place programs to help identify and remove problem police officers. So it is a truism, an accepted truism in police departments, that about 10% of the officers cause about 90% of the problems. So, in fact, one study showed that only 2% of police officers in a department were involved in 50% of the complaints. The phenomenon called the problem officer was identified in the 1970s by someone named Herman Goldstein, and he noted that problem officers are well known to the department, and to their supervisors, to top administration, and to the residents in the areas where they work, but that little is being done about their conduct. In 1981, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights recommended all police departments create early warning systems to identify problem officers and those who are the subject of frequent complaints and who demonstrate identifiable problems of inappropriate behavior. So as a society, I think we are becoming even more focused on this idea of removing bad cops, okay? At the same time, we have a lot of good cops out there, and we want to make sure that the good cops know that they have our support. So we are right now, or at least at the time I was writing this, and it's still true today, a year and a half later, at a dangerous crossroads. At one side, we have continued racial profiling, the selling of surplus military gear to police departments, and on the other hand, we have this movement towards de-escalation, non-lethal force attempts, and attempts to make police departments accountable to the communities that they serve. Okay, so I'm taking a somewhat faith-based position, but I do have some evidence on my side that we are moving in the good direction. Another area that we had in the last 200 years has seen a lot of improvement on is on our treatment of the disabled. 200 years ago, about half of the 8 million disabled students currently in school would have been kept out of school. And the students who even were in school there wouldn't have been a priority on giving them an appropriate education, right? So very low expectations kind of keeping them separated. And now about half of students with disabilities graduate high school, and a majority of those go on to attend college. So in 1968, the federal government sent 30,000 teachers through special education training and provided captions for 3 million film strips to make them accessible for deaf students. Special education is a highly sought out degree now, and in fact, if you're showing films in schools, there's a rule that it can only be shown with captions, especially if you have deaf students. So 25 years after the passage of Americans with Disabilities Act, basic transportation needs for people with disabilities have been greatly improved. So things like curb cuts, chairlifts on buses, and then of course our general attitudes towards the disabled have been greatly changed. So I think the theme of this is really the idea that we have a long way to go on addressing social injustices, but there is good reason to think that we are moving in the direction of good. And I think November being sort of a month to focus on things to be grateful about, and then January maybe starting off a new year in terms of like, what can I be committed, what change can I be committed to actually take some effort to bring about. And so we're starting that whole process of ramping up for a new year. So that's my talk for today. What we're going to do now is we'll get into a circle and then just have some discussion. Thank you.